Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel and welcome to my first ever video. So today I wanted to talk about my first trimester with you. Now I'm not going to lie, I did struggle physically and emotionally. However, I now feel ready to talk about my experience and hopefully help somebody out there that may be going through the same, or just to spread awareness about the things that I've learned along the way, because I have learned a lot. If at any point you start to feel uncomfortable with what I'm talking about, please feel free to click off this video, because I'm going to be completely open and honest and nothing is really off limits with me. However, if you do want to carry on watching, then I will get into the video now. So I found out I was pregnant on the 31st of December 2020, and it's safe to say it was the most perfect end to what was not a great year. I was in complete shock. I really didn't expect to be pregnant at all, because I didn't have the usual pregnancy symptoms that I thought I would get. I mean, I did get cramping and I had sore boobs, but that is completely normal for me before a period. So I just thought that that was what was happening. The only thing I will say is that I got up a lot more in the middle of the night to go to the toilet, which wasn't so normal for me, and that was kind of what made me take the test in the first place. So the first thing I wanted to do when I found out I was pregnant was to tell the GP. Now, my husband has Spina Bifida, so I knew I needed to get on the higher dose of folic acid as soon as possible. However, when I went to tell them that I was pregnant, I also tried to change my address at the same time, but they then told me that I was then out of the catchment area, so I had to register at a new GP surgery. It was not ideal, considering that obviously I wanted the tablets as soon as I could, but I managed to get there in the end and all was good. Managed to get my tablets about a week later, so it wasn't too bad at all. So when I took the test, I was just over 4 weeks pregnant, and I made the decision to tell my work at 5 weeks. Now I know that's super early, but I do work in retail and I was finding it quite tough having to work to the best of my ability while also trying to protect myself. It turned out to be the best decision I could have made, because 3 days later I was about to go on my break and I went to the toilet and there was blood on my underwear. So naturally my heart sank. I wiped myself and the toilet paper was completely like saturated with bright red blood. I just burst out crying. I told Kyle, my husband, what had happened, and I just kind of sat on the toilet for like 5 minutes just trying to compose myself as much as I could before I went and told my shift leader what had happened. So when I told my shift leader, I was just a complete mess. I fell to the floor crying, but he was great. He was really supportive and he offered to get me a taxi. Fortunately, it was my husband's day off, so he came and collected me because I was in no fit state to drive whatsoever. And on the way home, I contacted 111 because I had no idea what to do. I didn't know if I had a GP, and it was a Saturday night, so even if I did, like, they wouldn't answer. But they kind of asked me all the questions and stuff. I told them that I was bleeding quite heavily, so they wanted to get somebody out to check on me. However, when I got home, the bleeding had kind of slowed down quite a bit. Like, I was still spotting, but it wasn't the amount that was on the paper from when I wiped at work. So they kind of was like, yeah, if you get any more heavy bleeding, then just phone us up like over the weekend, that's fine, and then we'll get someone to look at you. But other than one time I went to the toilet on the Saturday night, I passed a small blood clot, but other than that, like, I had no bleeding at all after that. So that weekend, all I did was just lay in bed crying, feeling sorry for myself. But my manager did call me on the Monday and asked how I was and stuff, because obviously he had heard what had happened, and told me that I should get myself checked by the GP, just for confirmation that I had lost the baby, because obviously that was my instant thought. There was no way I could lose that amount of blood and still be pregnant, surely. So I did actually phone them up in the afternoon, and they wanted to see me straight away. So about half an hour later, I went to the GP and they kind of checked me around for pain, which I did have on my lower left hand side, and confirmed my pregnancy. So the GP told me to go to hospital straight away because he suspected I might be having an ectopic miscarriage. I had read about them before, and naturally I just was thinking to myself, could this get any worse? So I went to the hospital. They checked me over, they checked my blood pressure, my urine, gave me a blood test, and then told me they would contact me as soon as possible with a date for a scan. So my scan was 2 days later on the Wednesday morning, and I woke up feeling extremely nauseous. I actually didn't think I was going to be able to go to the scan because every time I moved I just thought I was going to be sick, which I thought was a bit strange considering I might have just gone through a miscarriage, yet my pregnancy symptoms were getting stronger. So I started thinking to myself, maybe this was an ectopic pregnancy and not a miscarriage. So when I managed to get to my scan, I laid down. It was an internal ultrasound because at this point I should have been 6 weeks pregnant. So obviously it's a bit early to be doing a like a normal scan. So I was kind of nervous about that because I had never had anything like that done before. However, it was completely fine. It wasn't bad at all, just a bit uncomfortable. So after what felt like forever, they turned the screen round and showed me a little flickering heartbeat and told me that that was my baby. I couldn't believe it at all. I can barely even remember what happened because I just went into a complete state of shock. They then told me that I had an area of bleeding called a subchorionic haematoma. Now, I had never heard of it before. I didn't know what it meant, but mine was quite large. So at that point my baby was measuring at 3.1 millimeters and measuring 5 to 5.5 weeks instead of 6 weeks like I thought I was, but the area of bleeding was actually 4 centimeters by 1.5 centimeters. So you can imagine like the size comparison, which scared me quite a lot. So after the scan I went to another room with a midwife who kind of went through the scan with me, told me what a subchorionic haematoma was, and that I won't necessarily lose the baby, but obviously the chances are more likely because it's considered a threatened miscarriage. So she told me that the haematoma could resolve itself by bleeding out and warned me that I might be experiencing more blood loss over the next few weeks, or that my body could just reabsorb it and I won't see any more blood. So after that I was just being as careful as I could be. I rested a lot more, I did no heavy lifting, and I was fortunate enough where work actually signed me off at 7 weeks, which was one thing that I didn't have to worry about anymore, because I really don't know how I could have worked through that with this playing on my mind. So moving on to the other symptoms that I had in the first trimester, obviously I've already mentioned sickness, which only got worse until about 13 weeks. I really struggled with sickness and dry heaving especially. I really recommend eating something before getting out of bed because I made the mistake of not doing that and dry heaving for about half an hour over the toilet. It was not fun at all. But yeah, I did find that eating definitely helped. Another thing I really struggled with was being out of breath all the time. Now I have asthma anyway, which obviously wouldn't help things, but yeah, that was one thing that I did find very tough to deal with. So the sore boobs that I had before finding out I was pregnant lasted for a couple of weeks and then changed into more like sensitive nipples, and then that lasted a couple of weeks and then I just had nothing, which I mean I'm not complaining about because it was not a comfortable feeling at all. In terms of food, I really went off meat, dairy, eggs, that sort of stuff. The smell of it and the thought of it was just not appealing to me at all. And the only thing that I really wanted all the time, like in terms of cravings, was sugar and lemon pancakes and alcohol, which was weird considering even before becoming pregnant I was not a big drinker at all. Obviously I didn't give in to that craving, but yeah, I found that pretty strange. I couldn't stomach water, so I had to drink squash, and then after a while of that I just completely went off squash, and the only thing that I could drink was Lucozade Sport. Now I know that's not the best for you, but at that point I was just desperate to get anything like in my body because I was feeling like dehydrated. So the final symptoms that I had was a hairy belly, which I was not expecting at all, and tiredness, which I do struggle with anyway, but that first trimester was just something else. So at 8 weeks I had my booking appointment, and then a couple of days later I had my first ever midwife appointment, which I was super nervous for. I really didn't know what to expect, but she was lovely. She checked my blood pressure, checked my urine, and did a blood test, which didn't go too great because I kind of had a meltdown in the middle and had to be moved to the bed, but she said it was fine, like they could do the extras at my 13-week scan when they take the bloods for that. Unfortunately, a few days later I received a text telling me that they had found group B strep in my urine and I was being given a course of antibiotics. Now I had never heard of group B strep before, so I did my research and I will leave a link in the description box below if you want to read up about that. I really recommend it if you haven't heard of it before. So what that means for me going forward is that I will need to be given antibiotics in labour to try and reduce the risk of transmission to my baby. Now that does worry me, but I'm just glad that I know about it now and that the correct action will be taken. So at 13 weeks I had my NT scan, and fortunately my husband was able to come with me to this one, which was amazing. I was so worried to find out if everything was okay and what the situation with my haematoma was. I didn't know if it had grown, if it had shrunk, or if it had completely disappeared. I had barely any blood after my first scan, so I really didn't know what was going on. We weren't actually told during the scan anything about it. So I asked at the end and she said that she could see no sign of it at all and that my body must have just reabsorbed it, which was the best news we ever could have wanted to hear. So she said everything looked great and baby was measuring right on track for dates, and gave us this little picture, which I am just so obsessed with. I can't believe that, like, this is my baby. So after the scan, Kyle had to leave and then I got my blood test taken, which was absolutely fine this time. They got somebody in to distract me and give me a glass of water and stuff, which did make it a lot easier. And yeah, that brings me to the end of my first trimester. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please give it a like, and if you've got any questions, please comment them down below. Subscribe to see more videos from me coming in the future. So I'll leave my Instagram in the description box below, and if you want to ask me any questions over DM or anything, please feel free to do so. I really don't mind answering anything on there. So yeah, I will see you in my next video.